There's only one comedian in history who had the best all-time performance, and he had 4 days in jail to think about it.
From the pulpit of the St. John Church in Birmingham, comedian Dick Gregory speaks to an overflow crowd of more than 2,000 Negroes active in the Birmingham movement. 5 days earlier, Mr. Gregory was arrested for parading without permit when he led Negro school children in a segregation protest march on Birmingham City Hall. That day, some 850 persons, most of them children, were arrested and jailed. Continuing protest demonstrations, the biggest in this nation's history, led to further mass arrests. In all, 3,200 demonstrators were arrested. Now, Mr. Gregory, on the next night following his release from Birmingham jail on $300 bail bond, is introduced to this overcapacity crowd.
But let me present to you our good friend and fellow freedom fighter from Chicago, Dick Gregory.
Say thank you very much, and tell you one thing, is sure it's nice being out of that prison over there. A lot of people asked me when I went back to Chicago last night, they said, well, how were the Negroes in Birmingham taking it? What did they act like? What did they look like? I said, man, I got off the plane at 10:30, arrived at the motel at 11, and by 1 o'clock I was in jail. So I know what you all mean when you refer to the good old days. And I asked one guy, I said, what is the good old days? He said, 10 BC and 15 BC. I said, well, baby, you're not that old. He said, no, I mean 10 and 15 years before Bull Connor got here. And they had so many Negroes in jail over there the day I was in. When you looked out the window and seen one of them walking around free, you knew he was a tourist. Got back to Chicago last night, and the guy said, well, how would you describe the prison scene? I said, baby, it was just wall-to-wall us. So I don't know, really, when you stop to think about it, that's some mighty horrible food they were giving us over there. First couple of days, it tastes bad and look bad, and after that, it tastes like home cooking. Matter of fact, it got so good the third day, I asked one of the guards for the recipe. But you know, really, I don't mind going to jail myself. I just hate to see Martin Luther King in jail. For various reasons. One, when the final day get here, he's gonna have a hard time trying to explain to the boss upstairs how he spent more time in jail than he did in the pulpit. But when I read in the paper in Chicago where they had him in jail Good Friday, I said, that's good. And I was praying and hoping when they put him in Good Friday, they had checked back there Easter Sunday morning, he would have been gone. That would have shook up a lot of people, wouldn't it? I don't know how much faith you have in newspapers, but I read an article in the paper a couple of days ago where the Russians, did you see this big? They gave it a lot of space where the Russians claimed that they found Hitler's head. Did you ever see that? Well, I want to tell you that's not true. Now, if you want to find Hitler's head, just look right up above Bull Connor's shoulder.
You've got to keep the white and the black separate. Let the law enforcement agencies, that's what you've got them hired for. And the governor of the state of Alabama handle this thing.
And see, to be honest with you, I don't know why you call him Bull Connor. Yeah, let's say bull, that's half of it. couple of them hep sisters over in the corner. But I don't know, when you stop and think about it, I guess little by little, when you look around, it kind of look like we doing all right. I read in the paper not too long ago where they picked the first Negro astronaut. That shows you so much pressure is being put on Washington, these cats just reach back and they're trying to pacify us real quick. A lot of people was happy that they had the first Negro astronaut. Well, I'll be honest with you, not myself. No, I was kind of hoping we got a Negro airline pilot first. But they didn't give us a Negro airline pilot, they gave us a Negro astronaut. You realize we can jump from the back of the bus to the moon? Yeah, that's about the size of it. Now, I don't know why this cat let them trick him into volunteering for that space job. They're not even ready for a Negro astronaut. You never heard of no dehydrated pig feed. I never would let him give me that job myself. No, I wouldn't. That's one job I don't think I could take. Just my luck. They put me in one of them rockets and blasted off. We land on Mars somewhere. Cat walk up to me with 27 heads, 59 jaws, 19 lips, 47 legs, and look at me and say, "I don't want you marrying my daughter neither." Or I'd have to cut it. So I don't know. When you stop and think about it, we all confused. I'm very confused. Married. A wife can't cook. No, it's not funny. How do you burn Kool-Aid? And you know, raising kids today is such a difficult task. These kids are so clever, they're so hip. My son walked up to me not too long ago. He said, "Daddy, I'm gonna run away from home. Call me a cab." I remember when I was a kid, I told my father the same thing. I said, "Pa, if you don't give me a nickel, I'm leaving home." He said, "Son, I'm not gonna give you one penny and take your brothers with you." I remember when I was a kid, if my parents wanted to punish me, it was simple. They told me, "Get upstairs to your room," which was a heck of a punishment because there wasn't no upstairs. And I just found out something not too long ago I didn't know. You don't walk into a kid's room anymore. You have to knock first. So my daughter told me, I'm 3 years old, I got rights. "What do you mean you have rights? You haven't even got a job." I said, "Honey, you don't know how fortunate you are. You have a room by yourself, a bed by yourself." I said, "Honey, do you realize when I was 3 years old, so many of us slept in the same bed together? If I went to the washroom in the middle of the night, I had to leave a bookmark so I wouldn't lose my spot." She said, "Daddy, aren't you happy you living with us now?" Well, let me tell you about this daughter of mine. Last Christmas Eve night, I walked into my daughter's room. I said, "Michelle, tonight's Christmas Eve. It's 11:30. You're 3 years old. Go to bed and get ready for Santa Claus." She said, "I don't believe in Santa Claus." I said, "What in the world you mean you don't believe in Santa Claus and I'm picking up the tab?" She said, "Daddy, I don't care what you picking up. I don't believe in Santa Claus." I said, "Why?" I said, "Because you know darn good and well ain't no white man coming in our neighborhood after midnight." So you see, we have problems. I'd like to say it's been a pleasure being here. A lot of people wonder, why would I make a decision to go to Greenwood, Mississippi? Why would I make a decision to come to Birmingham? When I lay in my bed at night, I think if America had to go to war tonight, I'd be willing to go to any of the four corners of the world I'm willing to go and lay on some cold dirt away from my loved ones and my friends and take a chance on losing my life to guarantee some foreigner that I've never met equal rights and dignity, I must be able to come down here. But you know, it's such a funny thing how the American mind works, and this is white and Negro alike. Have many on both sides of the fence say, well, let it go down for publicity. One, I don't need publicity. But the amazing thing, if I had decided to quit show business and join the Peace Corps and go to South Vietnam, nobody would have said anything about publicity. Only when you decide to help us, you get a complaint. You people here in the South are the most beautiful people alive in the world today. The only person in this #1 country in the world that knows where he's going and have a purpose is the Southern Negro. Bar none. And when you break through and get your freedom and your dignity, then we up north will also break through and get our freedom and our dignity. Because up north we've always been able to use the South as our garbage can. But when you make these white folks put that lid on this garbage can down here, we're gonna have to throw our garbage in our own backyard, and it's gonna stink worse than it stinks down here. One of the greatest problems the Negro has in America today is we have never been able to control our image. The man downtown has always controlled our image. He's always told us how we're supposed to act. He's always told us a nigga know his place. And he don't mean this, because if we knew our place, he wouldn't have to put all them signs up. And if you think we know our place, let one of us get $2 uptight on our rent and 50 cents in our pocket, and we kick the hinges off them doors downtown at the hotel. But we've never been able to control our image. He's always told us about a Negro crime rate, to the extent that you have finally decided to believe it. This is the bad part about not being able to control your image. I've always said, what Negro crime rate? Look at it. We're not raping 3-year-old kids. We haven't put 40 sticks of dynamite in mother's luggage and blew one of them airplanes out of the sky. And I don't care what they say about us, we've never lynched anybody. So what Negro crime rate? If you want to see a true Negro crime rate, watch television. Look at all them gangster movies, you never see us. Because now you can look at TV week in and week out and look at all those doctor series they have on television, you'd be led to believe a Negro never gets sick. But for some reason, not being able to control our image have made us almost ashamed of us. Because anything he decides to tell us about us, we believe it and become ashamed of it. Negro crime rate, sure, a lot of us get arrested. Why? Your answer is right out there in the street every day. You got a Southerner out there on the police department that is probably the lowest form of man walking the earth today. Now here's a man out there, didn't like you in the first place, now he got a gun. What is your crime rate supposed to look like? They've got to the point where they've made you ashamed of relief. Don't talk to so-and-so, she on ADC. I was on relief 20 years back home. Wasn't funny, but I wasn't ashamed of it, because had they gave my daddy the type of job he deserved to have, we wouldn't have needed no relief. And today this white man, not only in the South but in America, give us fair housing, fair jobs, equal school, and the other things the Constitution says we're supposed to have, we will relieve him of relief. But until that day roll around, let him pay his dues. Oh yeah. The old check ain't much, but it's study. And then you read a lot and you hear a lot about Negro women with illegitimate kids. Oh, this really makes you ashamed. Next time you pick up one of them newspapers or one of them magazines reading about Negro women with illegitimate kids, check the article out and see who wrote it. Some chick living in a neighborhood where they got abortion credit cards. Never been able to control our image. All it was, we ashamed. Talked about us for so long, we started believing it. Talked about our hair for so long, for 100 years now, we've been trying to straighten our wig out. And wouldn't it be wild if you found out one day we had natural hair and there was something wrong with theirs? Every time you look around, they're talking about a Negro with a switchblade, to the extent we don't want to carry switchblades no more. Well, I keep me a switchblade. Yeah, I got a deal going with the white folks. I don't say nothing about their missiles, don't say nothing about my switchblade. Here's a man on half the missiles in the world and want to talk about my switchblade. I don't know one Negro in America that manufactures switchblades. Now he's gonna sell me something and talk about it after I get it. But he made a lot of mistakes. And had you older people been able to figure out the mistakes he made like the younger people figured them out, we'd have had this long time ago. Yeah, he made a lot of mistakes. This man got over here and didn't even know how to work segregation. Didn't even know how prejudice worked. He just wanted to try it. Said, we got a bunch of them niggas, let's try it. And he messed up. Because any clown knows if you want to segregate somebody and keep them down forever, you put them up front. They made the great mistake of putting us in the back. We've been watching them for 300 years. Oh yeah, that was a big mistake they made. We know how dirty they get their underwear because we wash them for them. They don't even know if we wear them or not. They made a couple of mistakes. It's beginning to catch up with them now. And one of the biggest mistakes they've made is that white lady. All at once they think all we want is a white lady. And they don't understand why we want one. It's their fault. Yeah, Buffalins can't advertise Buffalins without one of them white ladies, so we feel we need a white lady to get rid of our headache. Every year, General Motors advertise them Cadillacs with them blondes and know we gonna get one of them cars. Every time I go to the movie, I can't see none of them pretty little chocolate drops and them dynamite love scenes. Show me one of them white ladies. Every time I look at Miss America, I can't see no Mau queens. Show me one of them white ladies. So what am I supposed to want? But I'll make a deal with the good white brother. Yep, if you let me turn on television and see some of my women advertising some of them products we use so much of. If you let me go to the movie and see some of my folks in some of them good scenes. And if you let me turn on television this year and see 7 of us's on Miss America to make up, then anytime you see me with a white woman, I'll be holding her for the police. Again, I'd like to say it's completely and totally my pleasure being here. I don't know how many of you in the house had kids that was in jail. 4 days I was in jail. But But had you been there, as I was walking through, listening, it was really something to be proud of. Really something to be proud of. And if something ever happens and you have to do it again, don't hesitate. Because the only thing we have left now that's going to save this whole country and eventually the world is us. He taught us honesty and he forgot how it worked himself. Nothing wrong with that white man downtown. That you just have to teach him how to act. He don't know how to be fair. He don't know. We'd never complain if he was fair. Keep me a second-class citizen, but just don't make me pay first-class taxes. Send me to the worst schools in America if you must, but when I go downtown to apply for that job, don't give me the same test you give that white boy. Well, now we're going to have to teach him how to be fair. And the only thing we have to do it with is ourselves. This is it. This is all we have. He has all the police, all the dogs. Never thought I'd see the day the firemen would turn water on us in the summertime and make us hot. But they did. What these white folks don't realize is the terrific amount of police brutality that I have witnessed down here. But they fail to realize when you let a man bend the law and aim it at us, he'll aim that same law at you. Well, these are the problems we have. Again, I am as far away from you as Delta Airline is. Anytime there's any problem, I will be back. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Personal comment by comedian Dick Gregory, speaking from the pulpit of the St. John
Comedy
Church in
is
Birmingham,
not just
Alabama.
about being funny or receiving laughs. The common denominator that connects all comedians is we use our humor to overcome adversity in our lives. Dick Gregory elevated his comedy to help the audience overcome adversity in their lives. Comedians talk the talk, only Dick Gregory truly walked the walk. Comedians are the most selfish group of entertainers, yet only Dick truly exemplified altruism. His life and comedy were about helping people. Wherever injustice was, Dick Gregory was only a flight away. Shot in the leg in Watts and was arrested over 100 times during his activism. He ran for president in 1968. Dick Gregory did more to change America for the better than any comedian. Dick Gregory retired from comedy at 41, fully devoted to his activism for civil rights. Dick was a legend amongst legends. Muhammad Ali called him a great man. Friends with John Lennon, Yoko Ono, Michael Jackson, Medgar Evers, and MLK were dear friends to Dick Gregory. Unlike Medgar and MLK, the FBI couldn't kill Dick Gregory. There are only 3 comedians who made jokes that warranted FBI assassination: Lenny Bruce, Woody Allen, and Dick Gregory. The FBI had assassination plans for Dick Gregory on record. The most powerful people on earth were threatened by a comedian from Chicago. Because he spoke out against the Vietnam War, Dick fasted for the war and performed while fasting. He lost 200 pounds on this fast. Dick became vegan due to the nonviolence of the civil rights movement and witnessing cruelty to his fellow man. Not only did Dick love humanity, he loved nature, promoted hydration, and ran marathons while fasting. Tower Hill Farm is where he created his homemade vitamin formulation made from kelp. This vitamin formulation helped John Lennon and Yoko Ono become sober. Dick warned of a coming epidemic of obesity in America. Like Upton Sinclair before him, Dick Gregory tried to transform the food industry by making it cleaner and healthier. Dick's Bahamian diet sold for $30 million, but he was not a rich man. By the end of his life, he couldn't afford to pay his own life insurance payment, and he lost the family farm. He used all of his resources so he could continue to fight for us. All comedians stand on the shoulders of this giant, which is why Dick Gregory is the greatest comedian of all time.
Bar none.
Why did you go to Birmingham?
Well, I guess it was the same reason I went to Greenwood, Mississippi. Think of the 3 kids that I have and knowing that the people that's breaking down the barriers down south, and not only breaking them down for themselves, but breaking them down for myself, my wife, and my family, and I feel that it's part of my job to help them break it down, being that all of us will reap the benefits from this. Debated the night before I flew into Greenwood, Mississippi, simply because I had a new son, and I hadn't been able to get back to Chicago to see the boy. Mississippi won out.
Was there any pressure upon you at all as a performer not to do this?
No one knew I was going, but a couple of close friends of mine. My managers found out after I got there, which they wouldn't have said anything anyway, because we have a relationship where they know they work for me. Everyone on my staff, including my lawyers on down, works for me. So I make the decisions and the policies of Dick Gregory Enterprise. I've said many times I'm an individualist first, an American second, and a Negro third, but I'm a Negro before I'm an entertainer. Mm-hmm. So when my decision to go into any area or to participate in any affair, I do this as an individualist. I have never allowed restrictions in my contracts with club owners that if I'm in town and there's a benefit that I feel is for a worthy cause, I don't have to clear it with the owners. I try to stay away from the type of benefits that's a concert, a form of entertainment.
When you got to Mississippi, were they aware of you as a performer?
In many areas of the South, Dick Gregory was unheard of because you take the Delta area, these people, average Negro take-home pay is $300 a year. He's not reading the type of books that I've been getting the write-ups in for the last 2 years. Television, he's not 90% of them do not have them. When I flew in the plane load of surplus food into the Delta area, this is what made Dick Gregory in this area. Police knew this. This is why I never got arrested in Greenwood, Mississippi. A lot of the Negroes thought I was a preacher. Many never knew I was an entertainer.
The cops all knew, though.
Oh, yes, the cops knew. And when I decided to go into Greenwood, Mississippi, I never realized the impact it would have on the American press. I never knew of the amount of FBI agents that would be coming down. Only after I got in this area and really got to see firsthand what was going on. Because when I brought the food in, I really didn't get to see. We unloaded it, I got in a car, and I went right back to Memphis and jetted out. I was briefed on a couple of things. For instance, in Greenwood, Mississippi, the population is 22,000 white, 24,000 Negro. There's one hospital in the whole town with 168 beds, and 138 beds are for white. Well, a Negro can't even afford to get sick there. So when these people decide to march down to this court building and sign their names and identify themselves, they're also saying that I'm giving up on my medical care. So when a person says, I'll do this for freedom, and this opens your eyes.
How many of them vote in the 24,000?
We never could find out because you go in and you register to vote. It's about a month before they let you know how many have actually passed the test. From looking at the test, if they decided no one would pass the test, no one would pass the test. Because out of the 5 pages, there's only actually 2 questions. One is to fill in blank spot. They put the article, fill in blank, such and such article, the Mississippi Constitution. Write it in. Okay, now if you memorize this, the second question is the one that throws you. They say, now, in the space below, explain what your interpretation of this means. So if you have the exact interpretation of it, when the clerk grades the paper, this is not right. So this is the problem that they have. So it mainly ended up being a demonstration of, for the first time in 100 years, being able to walk down to the court building and in a group, in a large group. I know I made the comment the day the police was real worried. We had about 50 persons down to register, and they were, like everybody was upset. They followed us. They wanted us to walk in large lines. So I asked the police commissioner, I said, wouldn't it be wild if you found out all they was really trying to do is pay their water tax?
When you said things like that to people like him, what was their reaction?
Oh, well, this Hammond, this is probably one of the most beautiful individuals I ever met in my life. The outside, he's for the people there, but on the inside, he has enough sense to know what's going on. Anyone that would call the Greenwood jail for me, he would send a cop out to bring me the message. And this boiled down to the second day in town was to see who could outwit who. And this is what it boiled down to me.
How did that work?
Well, one day they would win, the next day we would win. Actually, what happened, they stopped our lines. Police chief, if you can imagine a guy being so stupid, he had to read from a piece of paper. He would hold it up and said, "We will permit you to go to the court building to register in small groups. We are not going to permit large crowds to go to the court building register. So I am asking you to break up this large group to go to the court building register or turn your lines back." So the first day we decided we would turn back. And we caught them by surprise because they stopped us about 2 blocks from our headquarters. And we all turned back, jumped in cars, and drove everyone over to the court building. Now, this was the first picture was released where the cop had my arm. So coming back that afternoon, we decided we'd walk. So we walk out of the court building, we make a left turn, and this is when it happened. So we put them in cars and carried them back over that afternoon. And leaving, the Negro district is located. You come out of the court building, you make a left. So they had all the police set up this way. So it was just a simple matter of walking in the front of the line and say, "Look, we'll wait till everyone comes out and we'll go right." And this caught them completely by surprise. And by the time they had gathered up the string of police that sit down for about 20 blocks and called them all back there, we had marched about 9 blocks. And nothing had happened. And the press was there, so they to come up and stop us then, after we'd walked so long with no problems, it would just been unheard of. So eventually they did stop us. They put 2 of the sneak leaders in jail, put them in the cars and hauled them off. So everyone was wondering, what do we do now? So I said, we'll stand on the corner until they bring them back, or put us all in jail. So rather than do this, they grabbed me, they put me in the police car, grabbed another girl, and they put her in the police car. But instead of taking us to jail, they carried us to the sneak headquarters. So when the cops stopped the car, I gave them $2. I said, "Thank you, cabbie." We jumped in the car, we went right back to that corner, and I told the police commissioner, I said, "Look, baby," I said, "if you say I'm under arrest, put me in jail." I said, "But if you take me anywhere other than jail, that's kidnapping." And it's just a running thing. And then after I found out the next day, they arrested everyone but me. I said, "Say, Hammond, look, you have my rider. I want to find out the bail. What's the bond going to be?" And he said, "Well, I won't know." I said, "Tell you what, if you find out real quick for me what's the bail going to be for all of us, I will walk from here to the police department, the station, and I'll ask you in front of all your friends. I'll call you Mr. Something I haven't called you since I've been here." And he loved this. He said, "Really?" And this is when the papers read, well, I was left standing alone and walked by myself to the police station. So by the time I got to the police station, he was holding a press conference so they could hear this. So I walked up, I put my finger in his face. I said, "Mr. Hammond, you told a damn lie on me yesterday." And it was just a running thing like this. And this is when I called my wife to come down. And I called and I was very honest with her. I said, I want to ask you something, and there's no love involved. It's not husband and wife relationship that I'm asking you this. I'm up against it, and this had turned out to be a game of wits. They will not arrest me, but it would be very embarrassing if they arrested Mrs. Gregory, who's been out of the hospital 2 days with her 3rd child. Would you get on a plane and fly in? No one will know but myself, you, and use your maiden name. So she flew in. I sent 2 guys up to Memphis to meet in Birmingham. And she marched every day for 3 days, and no one knew she was there. And I had already told her, I said, "If they arrest you, give me your maiden name." And I checked with an attorney, and I said, "Look, what kind of rap can they grab us on by not giving her?" And he said, "Well, this is legal. She can give a maiden name." At this point, they had laid off, but this would have been a shocker. This is what it boiled down to. We found out, they was finding out a lot of our moves from the Negro maids. And you have to understand, these Negroes in this area love these white people that they work for, and the white people actually love them. See, the difference in the North and the South is in the South, they respect a Negro as an individualist. They love him as an individualist. This one's, the sheriff better not hit this one. He's in trouble. Boys up north, the Negro is respected as a group. They say, "Well, I won't hire one of them, but if you get your FEPC pushed through, then I'll hire them all." I say, "Well, we don't want one, but if you can get that fair housing bill through, we'll let them all come in," which isn't true. But this is the difference in the attitude in the North and the South. When I found out our moves was being tipped off through the maids, then every night after the church meeting, I would ask, "How many of you here works for the white ladies in the daytime?" And they'd raise their hand. We'd take them in the back room. You tell the people you're working for, this is going to happen. By the time they finished checking out the good tips against the bad ones, they eventually gave it up. And then it got down to a point where everyone wanted me out of town. So we made a deal. The police, the lawyer was there. We'd held the trials. Yes, a Friday, which meant if I didn't have the money in by Friday, my bank's closed in Chicago. So I called my office and talked to my attorney. "I'm going to need about $50,000 down here." I said, "Transfer it into the bank." So they called me back, and they said the bank president in Greenwood said he's not going to handle anything with your name on it. We'll do it with Western Union. Western Union has an account there. Rather than do this in Greenwood, the bank stayed up until 6 o'clock They closed early that day, so they wouldn't have to honor anything that would come in through Western Union. So now the only thing we have left is property bonds. So we have 20 persons in jail, and we had to go out and get property bonds. So we had all the property bonds legit but 8. So I just found 8 guys in the street. I said, where you live? And they told me. So what's your phone number? I got a phone. I said, well, this is your number. What's your address? And they signed this here. And they signed it. So we had 8 bad property bonds. So about 7 o'clock that night, I told the attorney, I called Commissioner Hammond and tell him that Dick Gregory is ready to leave town, and the Negroes will be glad when he get out of town. But he claimed he's not going to leave town until he gets his writer out of jail. And I said, can you get him out of here tonight? Hammond says, wait, I'll call you back. So the judge called. Now the judge is at home, and he says, you sure he'll leave if we give him that writer? I said, yeah. He said, well, meet me at the court bill. So I tell him, I said, now when you go in, tell him that I just can't get my writer out of jail and leave, because people say I came in this area, stirred up a problem, and left. So tell him to give us all of them. So he went in, and the judge wouldn't hear this. So I said, we got 8 bad property bonds. Get 8. So he walks in, and the judge gives him 8. And we left town, and the rest of them got out the next morning, which was Saturday. But it just turned into a game of wits. This is why I could understand King's move with the kids. After they beat you down and clobber you with everything, you reach back, because there's a vicious war going on. You have to reach back and fight them any way you can. And the first let-up you have, they will print in the paper, the movement, the Negroes are not with this. And King was up against something else, because a town like Birmingham, where the population is 250,000 Negroes, well, when you stop and think that all you can get is 2,000, it would seem like the Negro community was not behind it. But King could have got 20 to 30,000 to march down a day, but all he could get was 2,000 nonviolent ones. This is why he resorted to using the kits, because of the nonviolent. I remember my first day in town, we had to stay in the church for 2 hours while we walked outside and pleaded with the Negroes out there not to throw any bricks and not to do any shooting or anything. And we had to go and just get them in small groups and say, would you promise me that you won't? And it almost gets to a point where you can't look at it, because when these people stand around and see him blast with his hose.
When you came back up north after the first trip, what kind of reaction did you get from people then?
It was unbelievable. The borderline guy, white and colored, had never understood what I was doing. The white that thought I shouldn't be talking about this on stage. The Negro that felt, well, you're making fun of the race, mainly because these things had never been discussed openly. I said, all right, we've been accused for 100 years of carrying a switchblade. All right, now let's either admit that we got a switchblade or accuse them for owning all the missiles. But just to mention the word switchblade, taboo. I go to Greenwood, Mississippi. Birmingham was heaven compared to Greenwood, because you never knew. You lived from second to second in Mississippi. You lived from step to step. You never knew when this one guy was going to get you from the rooftop. Whereas in Birmingham, you didn't have this feeling. I go to Greenwood, Mississippi. The first time in the history of the South, a Negro was untouchable. And this made the whites look at me like I was God. Who is this guy that they will not arrest? When I would walk into the court building, the clerks would slip out. Or if I stood outside, they would come and look at the window. Not with hate, but like, there it is, right there. You know, there was a lot accomplished in Mississippi, just going and by them making a mistake not to arrest me. Now, there was mixed emotions up north. Then I go to Birmingham. My life was in very good shape because I was arrested an hour after I got there. I had it made in Birmingham. I could sleep. I could not sleep in Greenwood. When we went to Clarksdale and they pitched a bomb in the church, and as I sit there, knowing this is it, but the bomb didn't go off. And then to see the police chief of Clarksdale walk in and tell me, he says, you know, Bobby Kennedy called me. I'm responsible for your life personally, and I promised him that you wouldn't get killed while you're here. And I said, well, I'm not worried about you, because any police chief that would hire 3 Negroes and take them out of jail and let them beat up 3 white boys, like happened here last week. 3 white fellas from the University of Iowa had decided to drive some food in, and this is what happened. He said, I'll take you to court and sue you for this. I said, well, your attitudes changed, because 10 years ago you'd say lynched. Now you're going to take me to court. So we had to get out of town that night. We found out there was a roadblock set up on the highway for us, so it meant we had to stay in a Negro's home. We didn't know who to trust. We got in the trunk of a car, told the guy to drive around and look, and we would stay, and he told us where we'd stay. James would sleep while I laid on the floor and watched this guy to make sure he wouldn't go to the phone. I would sleep while James laid on the floor to watch this guy to make sure he wouldn't call. Because after we found out that there were Negroes there, that was tipping off, solely because they're afraid. And when I go to Birmingham and I'm in jail, 3 hours after I get there, my life's in pretty good shape. I can sleep. In Greenwood, Mississippi, I couldn't sleep for the whole 6 days I was there. You know what it feels like all at once? Being in a town where if a guy walked up to me, no racial overtones involved, just says, this guy got some bread, let's rob him. I couldn't even call the police. You know what this feels like one day when you're aware? And as I looked at my wife and said, if If a group of men wanted to rape her, I couldn't call the police.
You're describing an occupied country in wartime underground.
Now going into Birmingham and going into jail there and getting beat up and then come back, and there no one have asked me since Birmingham, have hinted on interviews that a lot of people say this might have been for publicity. I called King and I said, look, I'll be in. I had to call from the Justice Department. He was asking me, when are you going in? You know, what do you think you can do? And I said, well, I just want to be there with them. Had they said, well, Dick Gregory, look, you're a strong fighter for the cause. We want to negotiate an agreement with you for Birmingham. Yeah, it took a lot of guts to do what you did, you know. Well, after going into Greenwood, Mississippi, it takes guts to stay out. After seeing this, you know, when you pick up the paper and you read where 20 persons was arrested, but when you're there and you know out of the 20, 12 of them range from age 98, 64, sugar diabetes, high blood pressure, heart trouble. One night in jail would kill them, away from the insulin, to eat the food they bring in with the salt in it when your blood condition is so bad. And then to find out that the sheriff said, look, you people are too sick to stay in here. Like, we're going to let you out. You have to promise us that you won't come back again. And they say, I can't promise you that. I will be back. And Hammond let him out. Anyway, these are the small article where this guy was interviewing one of the sharecroppers. Well, he asked him, how much money do you have? And the guy didn't know. He had to go get his cookie jar and count it, only to find all he had was $1. He said, well, how much do you have coming in? He said, well, I have about $10 coming in this weekend. The guy had 11 kids, lived in a 4-room shack with 3 beds. He explained the only time the kids get milk is when they go to school. So this reporter, the Northern reporter, said, if I could give you the one thing right now, anything you would want, what would you ask for? And this guy said, freedom. 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 This means the richest Negro in America, he wants this for him. This guy has nothing. This is the attitude of the South. But I have taken such hell of a financial beating. I guess this have cost me close to $40,000. Plane fares and salaries. It cost me something like, $2,500 a week just for my staff. Writers, the rent at home, the car and everything. So when you blot this time out in the schedule, you're not only losing, but you still have this payroll to meet. And when I sent the researchers into Mississippi, they got there about a week before I was there. The one white fellow who's the #1 researcher for me shows his press card and he's interviewing the mayor. Gregory, a comedian or something's coming down, saying, what's going to happen when you get here? Oh, well, we're going to let that nigga talk, and then tomorrow we're going to make a statement. And surely he's a troublemaker. By the way, it's all prepared here. Here's one. And when I get in, the guy works for me. When I get in, before I make the speech, I have what they're going to release to the press. So in making the speech that night in the church, I said, you know, after being around one of these low-down city officials, it's like being around all of them. I can tell you what they're going to say tomorrow. And I ran it out word for word. It's like... So he goes in the next day, and he says, you know, this is the strangest individual I ever met in my life. He said, how in the world could he guess what we were going to say about him? You know? And when the police grabbed me, he walked in the sheriff's office. He says, you had that Dick Gregory out there, you should have beat the hell out of him. He said, oh, sure, don't say that for the guy that grabbed him might lose his job now. And then this is when I knew I could have my way. But I have him on each end of town. And then you know exactly what's going on. You know every move. We were marching by the house. And before they knew it, they was in the line. And then just sit and listen to a woman tell you on the way, I can't read or write, Mr. Gregory. Probably couldn't pass the test if it was legal in the jet. But I'm marching with y'all. I'm going to die with y'all this morning. I said, why? She said, because in 92 years, I've never been able to walk downtown on the sidewalk and didn't have to move for nobody. And then you find out that the Southern Negro is the individual that's going to save America because he's the only one that has a purpose, a meaning. We're getting the same reaction that made this country so beautiful when the Founding Fathers first got here. And when you finish with your police dogs and your water hoses and fill up all your jails, we still want it. It's a shock to come back up north because you have to keep kicking yourself in the tail to keep from hating the Northern Negro and the Northern White. And the attitude up here. I hear so many Negroes that say, if I was down there, this is what I would do. And they sincerely mean this, but it's so wild. No Negroes I knew ever talked about what they was going to do and how bad and mean they were until Martin Luther King started preaching nonviolence. Then all at once you had the other end that said, well, I couldn't be nonviolent. Before this, they never said it until we said, this is the route we will take. I try to portray it this way to the friends that I know that say, I would have to fight back. Violence is the way. Tell them. Talked to the police in Chicago. I said, look, you're a policeman. I said, what would happen to you if you shot and killed a 14-year-old white boy that had just snatched a pocketbook? I I said, you'd be in trouble. So even here, with the law and the badge and the gun, you have to be careful about who you shoot. So what do you think there is in the South? Nonviolence is the only way, which I think you almost have to go there and find out. Whereas up north, if a white man slapped me or slapped any Negro, I pulled a gun, or any other Negro pulled a gun and shot this white man and killed him, the police is going to come out and they're going to lock up Dick Gregory, or the individual that's responsible for the murder. This is different. In the South, if a white man slapped a Negro and the Negro shot him back, they're going to get a nigger. It's a big difference. And I asked him, how would you feel if you were gone into an area in the South, sheriff spit in your face, and you killed him and got away, but had to live with the fact that the night that you were leaving, 10 Negro kids was left. Could you live with it? There's a just price to pay. That's the difference. In the South, when a Negro, wrong or white, they just want another Negro, period. This will satisfy them. Whereas up north, we pride ourselves in getting the right one and not being happy until we get the right one. This is why the nonviolent movement have to be nonviolent. Beauty in the nonviolent movement. To look at people that's willing to go through all of this and never be bitter. And these people are not bitter. Cop knocked this woman down, 98 years old, and she got up off the ground. She said, don't let that bother you, Mr. Gregory. Bother you at all. They just want to make you mad.
Can you use this experience of yours in your work professionally?
No. When you commercialize on anything, for one, I think all the great writers have found out. The Hemingways suffered many years. When you commercialize, you have to water down the truth. I can walk up on a nightclub floor and work to 10,000 of the world's biggest bigots and win them all over. And if I don't get one laugh, I'm a defeated man because I'm a comic while I'm up there. And this is what I live by up there. Now, there's a difference if I walk in to make a serious speech and everybody laugh at me. I'm a defeated man. See, the attitudes run so close together, but still there is that dividing line. And this is why when you commercialize, and you are commercial, a guy walks in and he's paid his $3.50. You are a servant to him. He's in there to see you, and he paid at the door. He didn't come in free. But you never know this one guy that bought him a new suit and got a haircut and got in his car and drove 90 miles to see you. I had this happen when I was in a nightclub after I left Greenwood, Mississippi, the first club I played. They introduced me, the great Dick Gregory, right back from Greenwood, Mississippi, and would like to ask you to give him a standing ovation. And I didn't feel like walking out on the stage. I was bugged. I walked up and said, sit down. And I went back and I walked up to him and I said, look, I have no guarantee that the guy sitting there is from Mississippi, that resented everything I did in Mississippi. But he came in the nightclub tonight to see Dick Gregory, the comic. And how can you ask this guy to stand up? Bull Connor could have been in the audience. How can you ask this guy to stand up? You're not being fair to him. And you get the commercial, you know. And I feel, if I may use the word, when I walk up on the stage, I'm prostituting myself because I'm doing it for a price. And this is the sole reason I'm there. I'm not up there working free. I'm paying the rent, and I'm doing all the luxuries out of it. I think you are obligated to these people because many people sitting in that audience have more problems than you have. Mm-hmm. And they are merely there to escape. And it's the same thing if you come to my home. I bend over backwards for you. I let your kids do things in my house I wouldn't let mine do because you are in my home. All right, when I'm in that nightclub and you come in, you're in my home. Now, it's only a lucky guy that works hard and associates himself with the right people that can walk up on that stage and stay as close to the truth as I've been able to stay there and still entertain. I've had some that slips through it, some that reach through it. They don't know that I know what they mean. It hurts me when they walk up and say, Mr. Gregory, I cried listening to you. You're not a funny man. That's one that I wasn't able to fool. I had an incident, and what really woke me up, just when I really began to hit it big in Chicago, the Playboy Club, man. We packing them in. And I had to go to do a benefit, all Jewish affair. Now, all top entertainers was on the bill. Comics, Henny Youngman, Jackie Leonard. I'm standing out waiting to go on. And knowing when I go on, I'm going to destroy this audience because I know what's been happening at the Playboy Club. And I'm walking up, and I've told him when I come in, I have to get back to my show. I can't do but 5 minutes. And I laid the strongest 5 that's been getting me the strongest laugh. I didn't hear a laugh, so I went 5 more minutes. I ended up working. Now I get past 15 minutes. I'm mad. I said, all right, to myself, I'll really bug you. I'm not coming off. And I stayed on 45 minutes. And when I walked off, I got a standing ovation. Now this caught me by surprise. And on the way back to the club, I realized this is the first 100% Jewish audience I have worked, and they understand. I've never had an audience that understands what I'm talking about 100%. This is their problem, and it wasn't funny. I didn't fool them. They read in between that line and got what I'm saying. It's a funny bit when I said, so many people, I say some of my best friends at college. Well, it's not that many of us to go around. I make a laugh or a joke, and I keep going. I run it over. They knew. And this is the problem. And how do you say it and conceal it? And to the attitude of 2 and 2 is. That's all you have to say, baby. When you got to break it down that 2 and 2 is 4, they're not going to understand anyway. So this is the attitude I take up on the stage. 2 and 2 is. You know what it is. If you don't know what it is, then suffer.
Los Angeles, California, 1965. The answer to a police order to disperse. North Philadelphia, August 1964. A frozen moment of defiance to authority in the middle of a 3-day riot. Brooklyn, New York, July 1964. Moment after a city official's warning that mob rule would not be tolerated. The National Educational Television Network presents Who Does the Negro Think He Is? An inquiry into the underlying causes of these disorders and the Negro's view of himself today. His hope, his anguish, and his self-image.
Who the American Negro thinks he is vital, essential information for this country. And it's a very difficult communication indeed. One moment, bits and pieces of social analysis. In the next, in the shock and anger of Los Angeles in August. Nobody really looks at the Negro. They look at the Negro problem. Dick Gregory came onto the national scene as another thinking man's comedian whose sharp and ironic humor carried a powerful civil rights message. He soon moved beyond show business to take an active personal role in the struggle for Negro rights, which took him to Los Angeles in August. The people of Watts, says Mr. Gregory, were not only mad at the white power structure, they were mad at everything. Dick Gregory, you were there. How did you see it?
Well, I almost drew the same parallel to history books I read when I was a kid, where in early America we told the mother country not only were we not going to pay the taxes, but we dumped the tea in the water. Didn't feel ashamed of the Boston Tea Party. Imagine the British looked at it as looting, vandalism. I think had the British looked at it as a protest and tried to solve the reason for the protest, we might all have a British accent today. They looked at it as rioting and looting when it was far more than that. I watched 5 people turn over a bus. I looked at a guy standing on the corner that threw a brick and hit a moving car and completely knocked the car over. This is not normal in no sense of the word. It's more of a picnic atmosphere, gaiety and laughter. The way they got into the stores was very interesting to sit and look at the pattern. 90% of these places that were looted, they jumped through the plate glass with their bodies, not with a brick or a stick, with themselves. The pattern of the looting was not all the stores in the block, but one store at a time. This was very important to see this pattern like this, because then when you hear, say, mob action, and you know how I refer to law and order was broken down, I think man's law and order had broken down, but human law and order seemed to have prevailed, because with all of this lawlessness, there was not one case of a rape in this whole area. With all of this law and order had been broken down for this long, there was not one case of armed robbery. There was not one case of the usual form of law and order that I'm sure they have tremendous records of there. So I think it was something to be studied and something to be watched and something that we can learn something from. Basically, if we look at this as an American problem. The frightening thing is you have to go outside the United States to find out where this really happened. It happened in America, not in L.A. as we try to put it. We've said for so long, it's pitiful that 30 churches was blown up in Mississippi. 30 churches was blown up in America. And had we realized that this was happening in America, Los Angeles might not have caught us so much by surprise. If one Jewish temple is blown up tonight in Moscow, Russia, we won't say, did you hear about the temple blown up in Moscow? This is what happened in Russia. And I think this problem is an American problem, and it is bigger than Los Angeles or Mississippi. And the day that we realize this and try to come to grips with all of these problems in every area, we can come up with some answers.
Well, Mr. Gregory, you have some very strong views about that. You think that heroic Marshall plans, missile programs, and social form ought to be taken off right away, huh?
Right away, sure. I have problems that I live with now from my childhood that could be said a Negro problem, but that wasn't the cause of it. I remember when I was 7 years old and went to see my first Frankenstein movie, and I was very horrified at the fact that Frankenstein really didn't frighten me. And as I grew up, it dawned on me that I was pulling for Frankenstein because Frankenstein was chasing what was chasing me. Now, had that been Charlie Chan and that Negro Charlie Chan ran around with it, Frankie was chasing them, I might have related. But it's a heck of a thing as a child child to go and see King Kong, and when King Kong's standing on top of the Empire State Building, and you're a little poor kid in a ghetto that have never been out of your neighborhood, and you've heard of the Empire State Building, you've heard of New York, and you've heard of airplanes, and to see this gorilla stand on top of the Empire State Building, snatching at an airplane, and you pulling for the gorilla. Again, he's pulling what had been pulling me, and I see this as a kid. And two, a very important thing, that I was quite old before I realized to go to a Negro movie, and this is all we had when we were kids, the tremendous amount of loud noise, and I was part of this, laughing at the wrong place, that's what the older Negroes would say we were doing, and uncouth. It was the only time we had the American white man to ourselves, man, and we took him apart. The only time I had him when someone really couldn't misuse me but another Negro. The white police wasn't inside that movie. Sometimes we got so rioted. Tarzan movie, I remember when Tarzan refused to let the great white hunter shoot the lion with the elephant gun, but when the Negroes jumped out the bushes, they shot them. When we turned the movie out to a riot, and the cop came in and we stopped. But the movie in the Negro neighborhood was a predominantly place where we had this white man to ourselves, and we took him apart. The doctor who lived across the street from me, who's in a $300,000 a year income bracket, and at 8 years old, I didn't know that due to segregation, he can't live where people that's making $300,000 live. So at 8 years old, I'm asking my mama, how come we don't go to Europe in the summertime, you know? How come I didn't get a red wagon for my birthday instead of a used wagon for Christmas? And so until you can remove all of these, sure, there's going to be a breakdown of respect with family. I couldn't respect my mother as much as I would like to, because at 7 years old, I didn't know it was a system that caused Dr. Young to live next door to me on relief, that had this system let him move out and live in an area where people that made $300,000 live. I wouldn't have been in direct competition with him, with his kids. So consequently, my mother would say, well, don't worry about that. You're doing all right. I had to watch my mother come home out of the white folks' kitchen and steal food. Well, mama's a thief. And there's one beautiful thing man's never been able to do. He can change the way he talks, but he can never change the way he walks. And when she would come home with this food in the shopping bags and demand that we say the blessing over it, and I was 9 years old before I told her, I'll pray over what you stole if you come down the basement and pray over what I stole, because I'm a better thief than you. I just can't justify mine. So at what age do you watch your mother, your father steal under the pretense of keeping you from starving to death, which society had forced this on them, but mama was still a thief. So once you change all of these things, basically, then you have some changes. It was interesting, the Negro was shooting, but not to kill. I watched this, and the only thing I could come up with, I don't know how basically sound it is that the one thing that the Negro do not see, we see white folks down television every night, but we very seldom see him run. And I think he was more so shooting to make it, and he did, and he ran, baby, and he was nowhere around. And then when the National Guard moved in, it was a matter of the change of the uniform. See, the uniform playing a very important part in this. We talk about the early American, the British, the red coat. This is very important, the red coat, because it was a uniform. Today, it's a uniform. It's this blue uniform that many Negroes cannot identify with. Whereas when the green uniform came in, we can identify with the green uniform. There's been more Negroes in the Army than on the police department. The Army's treated us better than the police department have treated us. And we always talk about, upholding law and order and having respect for law and order, but law and order have to have respect for people, too. It works both ways.
Why did you get shot? What were the circumstances?
Well, I was standing on the corner talking to some people on one side of the street. Police moved in. These people were in their front yard. They wouldn't come in this area for about 6 hours. And when we got there, it was about 10,000 people or more in this one area. And we had got it down to 300. And when we got it down to 300, this is when the police moved in. Swinging and hitting anybody, going up in people's yards, hitting them, knocking them out. Well, the looters were gone. And if they really wanted direct contact with the looters, they should have come in 6 hours earlier. Then this is when guns started coming out of the house. And they were shooting at the police is when it hit me. But we had been in this area when it was difficult. We had to go get the firemen and almost lead them by the hand and guarantee them that wouldn't anything happen to them. Then once we got this crowd down to the size, then the police came in and they were very, very brutal. More scared than brutal, though. I could almost justify their fright when they came in. I almost overplayed my shooting by a Negro so no one would think in the country I was shot by a cop. This was deliberate. I mean, over so to the extent that it might have looked that they were shooting at me, but this was strictly so it wouldn't be said that I was shot by a cop, because once a rumor gets out in Philadelphia, the biggest rumor there was that a cop hit a pregnant woman and the baby died. And we had to get on loudspeakers the next morning and go all the way through the Negro neighborhood and say this didn't happen.
You don't have riots in the southern part of America. And there's a reason for this. If you had to go to America tonight and write down 100 of the top Negroes in America, 98% of them would be a product of the South. Now, how do you compensate for this when you've heard that the South had been so bad? The South have been honest. They've told me where I could go. They told me it didn't make it right, but they've been honest. And they made mistakes in being honest. They gave me a segregated school. And at the same time they gave me a segregated school, they gave me a segregated principal. The head of the school was a Negro. So at 5 years old in the South, I got to see a black man with authority. In New York City, we have 1.5 million Negroes in New York City. And we only have 5 Negro principals as head of the school. And we only got 4 of them within the last 2 years. So up north, a Negro never sees a Negro in authority. I went to a segregated hospital when I was 6. So consequently, I got to see a Negro brain surgeon. Up north, you very rarely get to see a Negro doctor, let alone a Negro brain surgeon. Not only did I see the Negro janitors, but I also got to see the Negroes who was administrating the hospital too. So all of these things have tend to work on the mind. So that's why it's in my book that I was never taught hate. And this is why this problem could go for so long, because my parents hid it from me.
Now, the first time that you really broke out and got some kind of prestige for yourself, was it an athlete, was it not, when you were at high school?
Was that an athlete in high school?
And you talked at one point in your book about the difference between a Negro succeeding as an athlete, running as you were, and a Negro succeeding with his wits as an entertainer, which you later became. There's a distinction, isn't there?
There's a tremendous distinction. In America, at the time that I broke through as an athlete, the Negro was so looked down on that an athlete could represent the whole race. This is why we had so much admiration for Joe Louis, because when Joe Louis won a fight, every Negro in America won that fight, and white folks treated us a little bit different the next day. If a Negro stuck up a bank, every Negro in America stuck up a bank. And it's very frightening to know that today, if I stuck up a bank in Chicago, I become the Negro criminal. If I came to London and stuck up a bank, I become the American criminal. And this is very frightening and very insulting that when I get on a plane, I hate to leave my country because I'm 34 years old and I've been out of America 5 times. And the only time I've been forced to write the word American is when I come here to London, because you don't ask on the slip that I fill out race or color. You ask nationality. And the first time I had to write the word American when I came here to London, I almost had to think how to spell it, because in 33 years, I never needed to write this word. White America looks around and they see that this civil rights movement didn't want just a little bit. You see, they gave us what we wanted, not out of the goodness of their heart. We went out and we marched and we demonstrated, and we got a bill pushed through. But what the bill meant was, for 100 years, a man changed my dollar for 32 cents. Today, he's giving me 64 cents. And what Black America is saying, we don't want 64 cents change for $1. We want a full dollar's change for $1, or this cash register won't ring no more. What we're saying, if you don't change my dollar the same as you change white folks' dollar, we're going to act the same way. Now, America's not going to put up with this, and they're going to pass law that's going to say that you can be arrested for inciting a riot, which means if Dick Gregory goes into a city and tell the truth, and a riot starts a year later, they can come back and put me in jail for inciting a riot. And what they're going to do is make that Constitution work different. But anytime the oppressor starts killing the oppressed people to get to the man who's oppressing him, they usually wake up. And I think this is the sad commentary that's going to happen in America. We're going to pass law and make this beautiful civil rights movement. And I say beautiful because never in the history of the world have anyone ever done what the Negro in America is trying to do. And every white man in America should fall on his knees and thank us, because we're the first time a social revolution broke through where we're not saying we want to change the institution. We're saying cut me in on my share. And I think he will pass law of such that will make this black man say, okay, baby, let's change it. And when we get it, we're going to take it for ourselves.
Dick Gregory, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
About a year ago in Chicago, I was walking down the street, downtown in the Loop. About 10 o'clock in the evening, a white cat walking down the sidewalk. He see me coming, he jump all the way off the sidewalk and get in the gutter. Scared to death. He said, mister, you're not gonna bother me, are you? I said, no, my man, I'm Dick Gregory. I'm dedicated and committed to nonviolence. He said, you mean you are the Dick Gregory? You don't carry no gun or no knife? I said, no. He said, you don't do no shooting or cutting? I said, no. He said, well, stick him up, nigga.
I feel when I was in the nightclubs making $5,000 a week, I was very insulted. Not only people, but newspaper articles talking about, how much my humor was helping to solve problems and how it was bridging the gap of understanding. And I can't say that it was not. All I can say that I had no intentions when I walked up on the nightclub stage to solve problems. I was up there as a comedian to pay my rent. And so I felt that in order to get involved and really, buck a system and clean it up and make a democracy work, was not on the nightclub stage. So I came out and I marched, and I led marches. And when I was leading marches, I wasn't being funny. And when I went up on the nightclub stage, I didn't go up to protest. And then I looked around one day and I found this strength of emerging youth that was asking questions and wanted to get involved. So today I spend 98% of my time on the college circuit, because the young kids in America today is probably the most morally dedicated, committed group of young folks that's ever lived in the history of this country. And I feel that this is the only place for me to be at this present time.
Dick Gregory woke up every morning and thanked God that not only did he wake up that morning, but also that the drug pushers and KKK woke up that morning as well.
I grew up seeing things in the ghetto that most white Americans don't even know exist, and then they scream about black folks should respect the police. And we have to laugh at that, because if they was in the black ghetto and was seeing the things that happen to us in that black ghetto and the things that we have to see, they couldn't have respect for that policeman. And also, it seems to be something that a lot of people fail to understand, that when the civil rights movement started, there was a passionate resentment for the police, not because he was any worse, not because, matter of fact, there's less police brutality now since the civil rights movement than it was before. But the problem is to grow up in a black community in America and all your life see the whore, the prostitute, the pimp, and the dope pusher, and the cop, and this dope pusher that's really a detriment to not only the black community, but to any community, and not being molested by the police. And then I look at a black civil rights worker come in my community to uplift me, and he gets all this static from the police. The cops is watching them, they knocking them down, they making arrests. Look what happened with Father Groppe. Father Groppe's in jail because he tried to lead black folks to a better way of life. Why don't they arrest the pimps, the whores, and the hustlers in Milwaukee? So we look around and we see a system that don't do anything good for me at all. In the 1968 Civil Rights Bill that was passed, the housing bill, they also tacked onto that bill a segment called the anti-riot section. You can't cross the state line. And if you look at America, how much he's used the anti-riot section, the 8 kids that's on trial in Chicago was busted under that new civil rights bill with the anti-riot section. The weathermen that came to Chicago to demonstrate a couple of weeks ago, they are being investigated on it. So we look at white folks that can take a civil rights bill, and the part that would do me the most good as far as enforcing housing, they're not that stuck on, but the part that can put somebody in jail for either rallying behind my cause or trying to bust the system, this is the part that they're using. And so, black folks more and more is getting, tremendously alienated with the system. And many people don't seem to understand what we're talking about, mainly because many people don't understand what black folks is going through.
Dick Gregory made a distinction between humor and comedy. Humor is a daily occurrence in everyone's lives. Comedy is the professional version of humor, honed by a dedicated craftsman. The etymology of Dick's comedy career began by listening to his classmates' schoolyard jokes about him in the Dozens format.
Well, you have any questions you want to ask first? That each one of you had to ask one question before you could leave. Think about it, and then tell me what would it be.
When did the natural styles come out?
Well, let's go back to slavery, right? We came here, we had natural, kinky hair, right? Then we started combing our hair so it could look like the slave master, right? Now, my woman went to the beauty parlor and got a hot comb on her hair to straighten it out
so it could look like the master's wife, right? Now we're in trouble, right? Because anytime I want to emulate and look like the people who have misused me, then we're in trouble.
So what happened, you had young black folks like Stokely and Rapp that was hip enough to know that we needed an identity. That identity was not with the man up on the hill. That identity was not with a Cadillac. That identity was not with how far you could hit a baseball. That identity was not where you lived. That identity was not how many A's you made in school. That identity was with self, right here, with self. Then all at once we start talking about black is beautiful. Black is beautiful. We had to counteract the thing we've heard so long that black was not beautiful. That a little black lie. It was always a black lie. You know, it's always a black market means something bad. So nothing black ever meant anything good. And so consequently, when we talked about an identity, accepting me as I am, a man looked around me and found out my nose was wider than his. And he started putting me down, said my nose was funny, but man couldn't breathe without taking in air. So the wider my nose just means we take in more air than him. You know? Now he's the one should feel uptight that nature kind of shortchanged him. You know? And if you don't believe that's important, you go to the hospital, Jim, and you go to a white hospital, them cats got them big oxygen tents. $400 for the oxygen. We don't need that. Most they got to do is plug up one of our nostrils. This cat got him a thing and he's getting too much air. You know? And so then we start talking about what is beautiful about us. We talk about the naturistic characteristics. We talk about the way we talk. We talk about the way we communicate. We look at white television and we can't communicate with it. You look at the weatherman. You know? Look at the white weatherman. He comes on. He talks about the weather in Oklahoma. Well, most black folks in the ghetto ain't going to Oklahoma. I got to have a black cat to give me my ghetto news because I don't want to hear nothing about no humidity. You understand? I don't hear nothing about no barometer. You understand? I don't hear nothing about no wind velocity. Because I get that through the hole in the back window. I know about the wind velocity. You understand? You see, and we're talking about communication. And with this black thing, we can't communicate. That's one of the problems you have in your school. You know? 9 times out of 10, you're in an all-black school. But you reading Jane and the Third Reader about some old white girl that's giving honey to a dog or giving a steak. And 9 times out of 10, the way she's feeding the dog is more than you gonna have for dinner. Now that book's good down in the white neighborhood where they getting a whole lot of food to eat. See, it becomes a nice story. But it can alienate poor folks looking at Jane and the Third Reader feed that dog. It alienated me when I was in school looking at them white kids kiss them animals and knew how they felt about me. Tomorrow when I go to Birmingham, I will not go as a black man. I'll go as a human being. Before, when I went into Alabama, it was always as a black man. I had to be conscious that I was black. It meant life or death, you know. I would get spit at because I was black. I would know that I couldn't get in a cab because I was black. And I knew if I got killed in the South, it would be because I was black. And so when the Klan realized that, you know, that we had black people who was ready to die, there were not enough guns, there were not enough Klansmen, and the world was not enough crazy to stand by and look at black people get wiped out. And until you're willing to make that commitment, I am willing to die for a right. I am willing to die to rid the world of a wrong and replace it with a right. That a lot of people basically will play games with you. And so I think, you know, the real tribute of me going to Alabama tomorrow to the university to speak is to say thanks to the many people that was killed in Alabama. I look forward, and I wouldn't be fair if I said I didn't look forward to going to the University of Alabama as much as I look forward to going to Harvard and Yale, NYU, or Southern Illinois University. I look forward to go because of what we went through in Alabama, because of George Wallace. I look forward to go to rededicate myself, to say what a difference a day do make, you know, that when you are armed with a strong moral commitment, that one man with courage is the majority, that you don't need a crowd. We never had a crowd in the civil rights struggle. We've always had one man to pop up somewhere.
And so it's just like making another trip now. There are no fears, and there are no hang-ups, And tomorrow I'll get on the plane, and I'll go there, and it'll be just like going to any other college in America, with the one exception is the fact that, George Wallace did stand in front of the schoolhouse door and say, there'll be no black folks, in this college as long as I'm alive.
As he explained, the format of Yo Mama jokes derived from the notion that any flaws in the child are blamed solely on the mother. Instead of ignoring the taunts of Yo Mama made your legs so short, you should sue for non-support, he absorbed every joke made about him. One day, in front of his classmates at recess, he recited all of their humorous statements they ever made about him. Overcoming his adversity using their humor pointed Dick's compass north towards becoming a professional in stand-up comedy. An absent father, impoverished upbringing, and an apartheid were not enough to stop Dick Gregory.
In going to Alabama, and Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, there was a tremendous fright that would come over me. Not a fright that would make me afraid to go, a fright that made me know I had to go. But in the morning, I'll be getting on a plane to go to Alabama. Before I would kiss the kids, I'd wake them up before I leave, and I would really kind of say goodbye like it could have been the last time.
He sprinted past these obstacles, winning the state championship in cross country earned him a scholarship to university, which was interrupted by being drafted into the Army. His commanding officers urged him to do stand-up comedy. Like a good soldier, Dick Gregory won multiple talent shows with his comedy. Post-war Dick couldn't finish college. Dick was offended that his university was more focused on his athletics rather than his academics.
All right. Gregory, do you see a slackening in the civil rights movement, or perhaps just a shift of emphasis?
Oh, I think it's two. I think the civil rights movement have changed into a human rights movement, which is better for all concerned, because now we're talking about the problems of the Indians, the Puerto Rican, the Mexican, and for the first time of the poor white. I think this is very important. I think now we're talking about rural America, because until we solve the problems in rural America, we'll never solve the problems in urban America.
Did you participate in last week's Vietnam moratorium in any way?
Yes, I did.
What do you think of such demonstrations?
Well, I think it's going to have a lot of effect on Nixon. Nixon said it wouldn't, but I think if the president want to know how these young kids can affect the president, I suggest him to call the LBJ Ranch and ask that boy how much effect that young kids have on his future.
Okay. Very good.
Bye.
Thank you very much, sir.
Bye.
Nice meeting
you.
Dick opened his own club, the Apex Club, in 1958. The club closed the next year. That failure would lead to his apex. Starting in 1959, Dick was the master of ceremonies at Robert's Show Club, where Hugh Hefner discovered Dick in 1961. The Playboy Club in the 60s was the premier comedy club in the country, and Dick Gregory was the playboy of the club. 1961, the same year Hugh discovered Dick, his big break happened. A spot in Time magazine and appearances on the Jack Parr Show. Dick was elated by each performance, until he found out he wasn't allowed the honor of talking with Jack Parr on the couch. Dick had the merit, the respect for Parr, but because of one characteristic, he wasn't allowed to perform.
The question is you say,
is the South progressing more now, you think, than the North as far as the racial situation?
I think it have to, because they never had the hypocrisy that existed in the North. You see, I mean, everybody knew there was racial segregated schools in the South. Chicago spent $2 million doing a survey to find out the same thing any black person could have told them for free. And so, the honesty that have existed in the South means that the South, can solve its problems much quicker than the North can. You see, even there's a lot of sincere people that would like to solve the problem in the North, but just really don't believe it exists because they thought racism was an Alabama problem. They thought racism was a Mississippi problem when racism was an American problem. And so consequently, this is what, SNCC said when it said for white kids to get out the civil rights movement. It was a Southern thing. We got tired of young white kids coming to Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, bugging this racist redneck cracker when he couldn't take a nigger home with him in the suburbs of New York or the suburbs of Chicago or the suburbs of Boston. So what we were saying was, before you ever come down here and alienate your southern white racist brother, take a black cat home with you and bug your mom and daddy.
Dick refused to perform until he was loud on the couch. After his first time talking with Carr on the couch, instead of just performing, he changed America.
The biggest breakthrough for black folks in the history of America happened a few years ago in the state of Texas. We got our first colored hurricane, Beulah.
Thousands of people called into the network, astounded by the fact they related to someone who looked like Dick Gregory.
You can integrate that big breeze, baby. So I guess little by little, when you look around, you look in the right places, we doing all right. Can't turn no channel on television today without seeing something black. And it's about time. I got so damn sick and tired of looking at that white dove fly through that white woman's kitchen. Every time I turn on television, there she go, "Oh, Marge, there's a white dove in your kitchen." I said, if just one time I could turn on television and hear my sister run across yelling, "Beulah, baby, there's a black crow on the biscuits." So if you were looking at television, you got to admit we doing all right. Matter of fact, last year we got our first black cowboy. Any of you ever dig that show? What's the name of it? The Outcast. You can tell by the name of it, it's us. I understand next year we're gonna get us another black cowboy. So the first black cowboy had somebody to kill. I don't mean it like that. No, they let the black cowboy kill a white cowboy every now and then. But you see, whenever it becomes the black cowboy's turn to kill a white cowboy, the script writers really got to go through some changes. You see, they have to dirty up this white cat so bad that when the black cat gun him down, everybody will accept it. I caught one of them shows when the black cat killed the white cowboy. This white cat had just finished raping a blind paraplegic Salvation Army worker, right? "18 months I had gone out of my way to explain to white folks what black power was. I mean, even when I couldn't find white folks, I'd call them up on the telephone. "Hello, are you white? May I explain to you what black power is?" And black folks just felt after that tremendous heart transplant operation. You remember the first one in South Africa? Where the black cat gave up his heart to the white cat. The longest heart that pumped the longest in the history of heart transplant. That's black power. And let me be honest, black folks all over the world was tickled to death when we found out the black brother was going to give up his heart to a white cat. Because you see, we've been knowing for years that basically there's really nothing wrong with white folks that'll change your heart, wouldn't straighten out.
In 1964, Dick Gregory wrote a book that was titled A Racial Slur. He dedicated the book to his mother because anytime someone said the slur, they were promoting Dick Gregory's book.
Let me say to you, black folks in America do not hate white folks because you got some niggas hate turnips. Basically, black folks in America do not hate white folks. We hate this stinking white racist system with these stinking white racist institutions, not you. United States Constitution that gives a man freedom of expression gives you a right to hate me individual racism we're not worried about. This damn institutionalized racism that's choking us to death, and that's what we're going to deal with.
Dick Gregory was not satisfied at the scale of helping people that comedy provided. He wanted to help all of America by improving the political system.
The United States Constitution that gives a man freedom of speech, gives a man a right to call me a nigger, but it better not drop no rope around my neck, never again. Freedom of expression give a man the right not to like me because I'm black. Give him a right not to want me to live next door to him, and he got a right to exercise. When I move in, he can move out, but he better not stop me from moving in. That's what we're talking about.
In 1967, he ran against Mayor Richard Daley of Chicago, and in 1968, he ran for president against Richard Nixon.
As a human being, I got a right to sit up on this platform and look down and be sick enough to believe that everybody sitting out there is gorillas. There ain't a damn thing you can do about it, but when I come down and try to put y'all in cages, baby, then I'm in trouble. That's a right I do not have. So we say that we do not hate white folks. You know, I guess it's just white people's ego in America that makes themselves believe they're our problem. But really, white folks, as far as our problem is concerned, is so insignificant. No, all white people in America could disappear today, leave nothing here but black folks, Mexican, Indians, and Puerto Ricans. And if we still had to take these old funny tests you make us take to get into these institutions, we still couldn't get in and you wouldn't even be here. We don't hate white folks. We hate this stinking white racist system, these stinking white racist institutions. But we want you to know we're holding all white folks responsible for it. And that's what black folks is talking about today, this white racist institution. A white racist system that keep me locked in a black ghetto all my life, and I got to develop a different culture to survive with the rats and the roaches, and when I break out and come to your institution, you ask me the wrong test. You don't ask me about the ghetto. You ask me about the Eiffel Tower. And that's why black folks are saying in America, if you can't develop the right test for me, don't give me none at all. You know darn good well that Indian is up on the reservation, not because he wants to be there, because Americans keep him up there. Now that Indian came off the reservation in the morning to go to your college. You give him a test that ain't got a damn thing to do with life on the Indian reservation. Y'all can just see you now. Kemosabe. What's Abraham Lincoln's mother's name? What the hell that Indian care about Abraham Lincoln's mammy? Maybe we'd understand if all Americans had to take the Indian test for you to go to school. Suppose he drove you up on the reservation and asked you what was Sitting Bull's great grandma's name. It'd be a dumb country, wouldn't it? Hard to believe we can be much dumber than we are. Not only do we lock the Indian up on the reservation, we control his education. We so dumb we got nerve enough to teach the Indian that Columbus discovered America.
He ran on eradicating the two-party system because he warned a continued choice of the lesser of two evils will lead us into hell.
You have a big job. Probably the biggest job you young folks have. I do not advocate destroying the capitalistic system, but I say to you youngsters, you better work like hell to beat the capitalists into their rightful position, which is behind the United States Constitution and not in front of it. It's a big job. This country do not function under the democratic process. This country is not governed by the United States Constitution. This country is controlled and governed by the capitalists. The sad thing about that, as long as the capitalists are ahead of the Constitution, it means in America we will always put our emphasis on property rights instead of putting emphasis on human rights. So you got a big job. If you want to change the system, then aim all your grievances at the capitalists. Don't use the Constitution because the capitalists don't give a damn about the Constitution. The only reason they like the flag is because they make it.
youngsters got a big job. What do we tell you young folks in America? 18 years old, you're old enough to go to war and die for your country, but you're not old enough to vote. And I meet so many young folks running around talking about, I got to go to war and die at 18. I want the right to vote at 18. Don't be no damn fool. If you got to go to war and die at 18, you better fight to get the right to start voting at 17.
Dick Gregory, while campaigning for president, handed out dollar bills with his name and the phrase "cannot be bought or sold" under his face.
As groovy as you young folks are, if you ever get the right to start voting at 17, won't be no wars when you get 18. Last year when I was a presidential candidate, I let the whole world know had I been elected to the presidency, I wasn't going to end the war in Vietnam. No, I was just going to pass a bill saying we can draft these old fools up to 75 years old and send them to Vietnam.
Dick Gregory beat the Treasury Department's attempts to charge him by making the argument that until there is someone that looks like Dick on the dollar, there's no way anyone would think his dollar is American currency.
I wouldn't kill them all you young folks, send them old fools over there. But that'll save us a lot of money on that Medicare. Youngsters must organize. You want that war over in Vietnam? That ain't no big thing once you youngsters get organized. In a capitalistic system, I organize across this country, and then young folks decide you're not going to get a haircut till the war is over in Vietnam. The barbers will go to Washington, D.C. with their razors and make that boy in that war. So I say to you young folks, you got a big job. I say to you today, be sure and watch all of us old fools, and particularly watch your mom and daddy, because you got to sleep with them. Oh yeah, ask them. Like, you know, somebody come by your house today and knock on the door. Your mother and father say, who is it? Say, government inspector. Say, yeah, what do you want? Say, we want your dog or your cat. Say, what? Say, yeah, we just got a bill pushed through. We sending pets to Vietnam. I don't have to tell you how much hell your mom and daddy would raise if somebody tried to send that dog to Vietnam, do it?
Every politician gets asked, what is your first action in office? Dick's response was that he would paint the White House black.
Be a shootout on the front lawn. Now, it's really not funny when you stop and think. You living in a country today where your mom and daddy would raise more hell if somebody tried to send that dog to Vietnam than they'd raise over you going to Vietnam. That's scary. So I say to you youngsters, you got a lot of questions you got to ask. One of the most important questions you young folks got to ask, it's a simple question, but an important question. And that question is, if democracy is as good as we tell you it is, then why in the hell are we running all over the world trying to ram it down people's throat with a gun? And the day you young folks work to make this democracy work right, that's the day we can bring the guns on. Because you see anything good, you don't have to force on people. They will steal it. I say to you youngsters, you have a big job. Probably the most important thing I'll say to you all day is what I'm about to say to you youngsters now. I hope you youngsters do not make the same mistake us old fools made when it was our turn to go to these colleges and universities. We were so busy going to school to learn how to make a living, we forgot to learn how to live. Don't make that mistake. I promise you, if you go to this or any other institution for 4 years and just learn how to make a living, you haven't got a guarantee you can get a job and keep one when you get out. You spend your 4 beautiful years at these colleges and universities learning how to live. I guarantee you making a living will be the simplest thing on the world for you to do, bar none. Oh, I meet so many people say, I'm going away to college so I can learn how to be somebody. Hell, you was born somebody.
If you dumb enough to let somebody teach you how to be somebody else, that makes you two people. Check out what Sigmund Freud says happened to you when you become two folks. I hope you youngsters understand that all these institutions ever need to do is bring out of you what nature put in you, and we'll solve all the problems confronting you. Youngsters got a big job. Let me ask you young people to do me a favor one day this week. Stop off in the library and copy down the Declaration of Independence. Don't read it, just copy it. You know how to copy without reading, don't you? Sure you do. Here's the favor I want you to do for me. When you copy down the Declaration of Independence, keep it with you 24 hours a day. Never be caught without that declaration. And here's my favor. When the ride season open up again, oh yeah, this system even give us a ride season, July through August. This season we didn't show and the whole establishment got upset. Where were you? We had the tanks waiting for you. George Wallace, how come you think they didn't ride? He said, oh, you know them niggas is lazy and shiftless, they just got tired. I tell you where we was this past ride season. We got tired of stealing all them old bad, no good products. So this July through August, we decided to go underground and study the consumer reports. So when the ride season open up again, we ain't stealing no more Motorola's, baby. Now here's the favor I want you to do for me. When the ride season open up again, I want you to run home and get with your parents. Black kids, you go home and get with your parents too, because you got some black folks living in them houses with you that think more degenerate and more corrupt than the Ku Klux Klan could ever think, and you do know what I'm talking about. And when you get home, take your television set and put it in the middle of the room. Turn on the evening news, because they're gonna show them niggas riding and looting and socking it to the top. When you turn on the evening news, turn on Huntley and Brinkley, because they get close-ups. They get such close-ups you can recognize your kin folks. They Uncle Dudlow, I didn't know he was in Detroit. After you get your television set in the middle of the room, at that point, when you get the evening news on where they're showing them black folks riding and burning the town, at that point, I want you to go upstairs and get your parents and bring them down and put them right in front of that television set where they can see them niggas looting and burning. And listen to them. You've heard them before. Just listen to them. Listen to them good. And then my favor is this. After you heard them talking enough, I want you to go up and turn the sound off the television. So them fools can't see nothing but them niggas burning and looting the town. And at that point, my favor is, I'd like for you to take out your Declaration of Independence, get way back behind them parents while they looking at them niggas burn. I'd like for you to read the Declaration of Independence as loud as you can, and maybe for the first time, them fools will understand what they looking at. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, and when these rights are destroyed over long periods of time, it is your duty to destroy or abolish that government.
Dick Gregory was asked, why can't you say one good thing about America? And he responded, if you were a doctor and I came to you with a brain tumor and you told me how good my eyes and my teeth are, that wouldn't save me. Dick Gregory was the good doctor, honestly diagnosing America with an illness of moral corruption.
I know at first them old fools is gonna assume that was some message Malcolm X left for Rap Brown. But I'm sure with a minimum amount of persuasion, you'll be able to teach them that that was their beloved Declaration of Independence. That one with that mistake on it. That one where y'all forgot to write for white only. And you know, when black folks read it, we dumb enough to read this thing. We don't put white only on it. We dumb enough to believe that was for all Americans. But we know it's not, because when we do what it say do, you know, white folks wrote this. You know that, don't you? And we had nothing to do with it. We would appreciate it if you white folks would get this Declaration of Independence out of our black community. Since it's not for us, don't even bother us with it. Get it out of our black community. And right after that, we'd appreciate it if you come and get your little lily white, stinking white boy history book out of my black ghetto, because ain't no way in the world a nigga can behave himself after reading your white history. Not that history book of yours. You ever read it? That history book that tells me y'all landed at the Plymouth Rock and shot and murdered your way all the way across to California. Now you ask a nigga to behave? You can't be for real. You still silly enough to believe you can draft niggas into your army tonight, send them to Fort Benning, Georgia, teach them how to be gorillas, send them to Vietnam, killing foreigners to liberate another foreigner, and think that nigga ain't gonna come home one day and kill you to liberate his mammy. You got to be out your mind. We appreciate if you get that white boy history book out of my community. That book that everybody wants to talk about a nigga as a hoodlum and a criminal, and I read your white history, it tells me you came to these shores and discovered a country that was already occupied. Now who the criminal? How are you going to discover something that's not only occupied but being used at the time? That's like me and my old lady walking out of here today, and you and your lady sitting in your brand new automobile, and my lady said, "Gee, honey, that's a beautiful automobile. I sure wish it was ours." And I said, "Well, let's discover it." And so we wish you'd get that white history out of our community. Maybe we could behave. And when you take it out, read it. Sometimes we don't believe you read your history. Give me liberty or give me death. Who said that? Rap Brown, didn't it? What did Stokely Carmichael say? It's in your history book. Don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. You see, maybe if you read your history, you'd understand me. People run around saying, black folks ought to have respect for the police. We can't have respect for the police after reading your white history, because we see, well, you didn't have respect for the police. It's in your history book. It says, in the early days, when the British was the police, a white boy by the name of Paul Revere rode through the white community and said, "Get a gun, white folks, the police is coming." Y'all do understand them White Panthers, don't you? And then the riots start out, the niggas get to breaking windows and stealing television sets, taking them home, and everybody said, "We hoodlum because we steal television during the riot." I don't know how you can accuse me of that when I read your history. It said not only did you get on that stranger's ship, you dumped all his tea in the water. What the hell you mad about because a nigga got enough sense to take it home with him? So I say you youngsters got a big job. Briefly, before I leave you this afternoon, let me briefly discuss with you black attitudes in America. And Lord, know we got some attitudes, and thank God it's about time. In all honesty, we don't know what it is we've been doing in America in the last 2 years to alienate you white folks, but whatever it is we've been doing, we're going to keep on doing. Yeah, we noticed there's been more integration in the last 6 months than ever in the history of America. We don't understand what it is about white man's physical and psychological makeup. As long as niggas was running down the street singing "We Shall Overcome" and praying to that Jesus boy and being polite, you couldn't get enough dynamite to throw in our churches. You couldn't whoop and put enough of our leaders in jail. And all at once we changed our attitude and it looked like white folks' behave. You ain't listened to nigga in 2 years. You don't know what it is about your makeup that the more we tighten you up, the better you behave. So we figure we ain't got nothing to do but tighten you all the way up now. White America tells us to be nonviolent. You know what an insult that is? The only nation on the face of this earth that's dropped an atom bomb on another human being is now asking us to behave. We say to white America, if you love nonviolence, prove it to us. Don't do nothing for us because we prove we're burning town down, but get up on that Indian reservation and liberate your red brother, because you can't find a better example of nonviolence over the last 75 years than that American Indian. What happened to your appetite for nonviolence? That Indian want a better way of life in the morning. He got to understand he dealing with such a racist, insane nation that till you make her peep up through the muzzle of a gun, she gonna keep you a nigga. Oh, that Indian want a better way of life in the morning. All he got to do is get out in Arizona on the viaduct tomorrow morning, catch white folks driving down the expressway and start shooting at them, pow, and yelling, red power, whitey go home. When that Indian tell you to go home, he talking about the big trip, baby. And just as sure as that Indian get to raising hell in the morning, oh, I can just hear tomorrow night, them stinking reds. And you turn on television next Sunday and look at Meet the Press, they'll be interviewing some old Uncle Tom Indian. Now to be saying everything the old fools want to hear. I can just hear him now, me like a heap of reservation. Problem come from them young bucks, them Stokely running horses and rap like clowns. Long as that Indian keep coming off that reservation and burning, getting him some blonde scalps and raping some of you white ladies, oh, you get upset, but you listen to him. Oh, that Indian raised enough hell this year, next year you have an Indian here talking to you. So I said we tired of these insults. Nobody know how bad insults nonviolence is to a black man than me, because I'm so dedicated to nonviolence. I had to become a vegetarian too, because I believe that thou shalt not kill covers animals too. But that's my hang up now. I don't go around preaching vegetarianism. I would never knock a steak off your plate. I never want you to put one on mine. I don't go around preaching nonviolence. I would find more satisfaction in being killed by a man than killing that man myself. That's my hang up though. If a man was going to kill my wife and 7 kids, the only way I could stop him would be to kill him or injure him. I would not, but I do not have a right to tell you, you got to sit by and let somebody wipe out your family. That would be the route I would choose, and I have a right to choose that route. I would hope one day that you youngsters would create an atmosphere where we'd solve all our problems without killing. Since 1900, man has killed 90 million people in wars, and if that's not enough people to kill to prove we can't solve it by killing, then nothing is. And so I say, are we tired of these insults? And all we doing really is reacting to these insults. Now people come up to us and say, how come y'all don't want to be called colored no more? How come y'all don't want to be called Negro? I say, you call us anything you want to call us, but it's safer to use the word black. We don't mean to put white folks in no imposition, but we looked around and noticed you didn't play no games with yourself while playing with us. A Jew leaves Israel today and come to my country, he's a Jew in Israel, he stays a Jew when he gets here. An Italian leave Italy to come to America, he's an Italian over there, he stays an Italian when he gets here. These jolly old Irish, they left Ireland, they was Irishmen over there, they stayed Irishmen when they got here. We noticed you haven't played no games with yourself, and we both made the same trip across that Atlantic. We left Africa Africans, but when we got here, we got to be Negras and Nubras and colored folks. Don't play no more games with us here. Call me colored nothing. You want to play some games? Call yourself clear folks. And so we saying we tired of these insults. Somewhere America got to understand she dealing with a different black man today. 20 and 30 years ago, black folks in America had an empty stomach. Today, black folks in America have a full stomach but a hungry mind, and a hungry mind will not tolerate the same thing. An empty stomach did, empty stomachs deal on smell, and hungry minds deal on sound, and all at once this country don't sound right to us anymore. 5 years ago, 4 white boys burned up their draft card, and within 2 weeks' time, the Senate and Congress had passed an anti-draft card burning bill. We haven't been able to get them to pass an anti-lynching bill in 100 years. This country just told me she thinks more of a piece of cardboard than she thinks of my black mammy. I'll bring her to her knees for that. You can tell me I got to get a fair housing bill to live anywhere in my country I want to live. What kind of animals are you? That old white, redneck, Russian cracker broad, Stalin's daughter, a known communist and a known Russian. You ain't supposed to like neither one of them. You didn't make that broad get no fair housing bill to come to my country and live anywhere she want to live. Why do I need one? Boy, you got a record. That's why everybody's laughing at you all over the world. You pass one law and say I can't pee in the street. You pass another law and say I can't pee in the toilet. When I pee in my pants, you say I stink. Now who the fool? Say you youngsters got a big job. You haven't got much time. Straighten out this sick country, of course. Dick Nixon show you how sick the country is, a country with 200 million people in it. He get ready to pick a high, moral, upstanding man for the Supreme Court, and he can't come up with nobody but a Hainsworth. And the sad part about it, got nerve enough. Sad part about it, got nerve enough to say Hainsworth is the most moral, honest man I know, and I believe that. He probably is. Got a big job. But your mom and dad is writing a check for you, gonna bounce 20 years from now. See, it's a new world today. All you kids coming in them lily white neighborhoods and these old fools telling y'all about you can't integrate, you can't do that. 20 years from now when this world make a different chance, you'll be in trouble. In trouble. 10 years ago, if I was working in the automobile plant, Detroit, and one of them racist redneck crackers called me a nigga and I punched him dead in his nose, you know they would have fired me. But today they got to be careful about what kind of white cats they hire, because they know if you call me a nigga today, I might burn the automobile plant down. So for the first time, white folks got to be careful about what white folks see. This thing's going the other way now. That's what black folks is talking about. We tired of these insults. Oh, there's a lot of white folks that believe a nigga is the stinkingest, smelliest creature ever walked the face of this earth. That's a groovy hang-up as long as you keep it in your own head. I'm not here today to convince you niggas don't stink. I say do your own research. Check the records at the cosmetics industry. You see how many multi-billions of dollars a year you white folks in America spend on deodorant. Then check them deodorant commercials on television and see if you ever see a black armpit. And then figure it out for yourself. If niggas in America is doing all the stinking and white folks is buying all the deodorant, who really stinks in my country? So we said we tired of these insults? Oh, there's a lot of white folks in this country sick enough to believe because I was born black and they was born white, I'm inferior to them. That's a good hang-up as long as you keep it in your head. And that same white cat that tell you I'm inferior to him because I'm black and he's white, he be the first one to tell you if I go to bed tonight with an Irish woman, Italian woman, a Jewish woman, I can go to bed with any woman on the face of this earth and give her a baby. He be the first one to tell you that baby gonna be a nigga. My sister can go to bed with any man on the face of this earth and get a baby. The baby's gonna be her. Is that inferior stock to you? So we're saying we tired of these insults? Now white America's telling us education's y'all's problem. That ain't nothing but a cheap whitey cop-out. And if education was the problem, the Jews would own this country. Education's the problem. You ever stop to think one day how many millions of people would be dead today on the face of this earth if it were not for blood plasma? Are you aware of the fact that a black American by the name of Charlie Drew invented blood plasma? Now, don't take my word for it. Check it out in your library. Are you also aware of the fact that Charlie Drew bled to death in an Atlanta, Georgia hospital waiting room after an automobile accident because they didn't accept niggers? Education is my problem. The man with the wisdom and the educational genius to give blood plasma to the world died from the lack of his own invention, and education didn't have a damn thing to do with it. I guess I can truthfully say that I spend about 98% of my time today on college campuses, and for a reason, a simple reason, is that you young folks in America today is probably the most morally dedicated, honest, committed group of young people that's ever lived in the history of this country, bar none. And I hope young folks in America don't have to continue to read these old right-wing, cracker-controlled newspapers to find out who you are or what you all about. 24 hours a day we lie to you youngsters. And what's the number one lie we tell you young folks today? Well, I don't have to tell you here 24 hours a day. The number one lie we tell you youngsters, we say the number one problem confronting America today is the problem of air pollution. The number one problem confronting America today is the problem of moral pollution. This is the most morally polluted, degenerate, insane nation on the face of this earth, bar none. And you young folks in America have the important job of giving America her sanity back. And so I say to you this evening, you youngsters got a big job. Of course, you're getting a lot of help. I hope you understand how strong you are. Young kids proved that last year at the Democratic Convention. 15,000 hippies and yippies showed up in Chicago to change the system, and the whole country went crazy. It's a very important word, showed up in Chicago to change a system. That's what they got upset over, change the system. Oh, they want everybody to believe they got upset because those kids was coming to Chicago to tear up the town. You white folks know better than that. For the last 10 years, white kids in this country been going to Fort Lauderdale, Florida every spring break, getting drunk, tearing up the whole town, and ain't nobody got uptight over it. They just say, well, boys will be boys. Ha 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 ha. 15,000 hippies and yippies came to Chicago to change the system, and that's what everybody got tight over. Best thing ever happened for you young folks was the Democratic Convention being held in Chicago, because it sure woke up a lot of you young fools. There ain't nothing any worse to me than a young fool because you got so long to be one. Oh, they woke you up. 3 days after the Democratic Convention was over, the whole establishment tried to convince you that you did not see what you saw on television. They said it didn't happen. They said the press created it. You know, if Kosygin and the rest of them fool Russians in Moscow was dealing with the world as insane as America, you know they could beat that Czechoslovakian rap. Just get on worldwide television and say, you didn't see it, y'all. Say it didn't happen. Say, we admit we sent little miniature tanks to the Czech border for the kids to play with, and the cameraman blew them up to make them look like real live tanks. But I tell you, them old fools in Moscow, Russia's making the same mistake these old fools make in America. They plot their little sick, degenerate strategies, and after they plot it, they only take into consideration the reaction of the old fools, and they never consider the reaction of you young kids. Oh, I'm sure when them Russians knew they was gonna hit the Czech border with them Russian tanks, they knew the old Czechs was gonna run like hell. I can just see them now. Be cool, y'all. We can live under any form of government.
But it never dawned on them that the young Czechoslovaks, they would run, not from the tanks, they'd run to the tanks and meet them on the Czech border. And those pictures that came out of there with them young kids putting swastikas on those tanks gave people courage all over the world. Same mistake these old fools in America would make if Sunday morning you woke up and they got a tank in front of every church with a loudspeaker saying, anybody get caught going to church in America ever again is going to be machine gunned to death. They know what the reaction of your mom and dad is going to be. I can just hear them now. Well, Jesus is everywhere. We can stay home and pray. What they don't know, if they put tanks in front of every church Sunday morning in America, come Sunday morning, young folks that ain't never been to church in their life Sunday morning would decide to go. Again, let me say thank you very much. May God bless you. May nature have fun. Thank you. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. That when these rights are destroyed over long periods of time, it is your duty to destroy or abolish that government.
Dick Gregory could not be bought or sold, and that is why he added more value to America than any other stand-up comedian.
I found out about a young man by the name of Clyde Kennard. This is a Negro that registered to go to the University of Southern Mississippi 3 years ago. The day he walked on campus, they found $5, 5 sacks of stolen chicken feed on his farm. The next day, he was sentenced to 7.5 years at hard labor. I made a vow in the nightclub in Chicago, New Year's Eve, that my New Year's resolution was to see to it that Clyde Kennard gets out of the penitentiary. I had a young man from the press say, well, how can you do this? You're not a lawyer. I get the facts, and I expose the facts. America will get him out. This is the faith I have in America. Well, if I never live to see another New Year's resolution come true, this one happened.